Hello and welcome to the Freedom boat handover video covering safety and basic introduction to the boat, including how to tie up, rules of the river, filling with water and useful things like that. Please do watch the whole video, it's important because we will no longer cover these things in person when we hand the boat over to you due to COVID restrictions and delays. Thank you very much. So every member of your party will get a life jacket. Children will be weighed if necessary to establish the correct size. Otherwise, adult sizes are basically 3 sizes and we can determine those quite simply. Your life jacket needs to be tried on. Now they are just standard jackets. As such, they come on in the general way. Some have zips like this one, others have got clips instead of zips, and some have both. This needs to be put on so it's tight around you. They also have tails, which are crutch straps, so they go through your legs and connect to a small clip down the bottom here. Please, when you operate outside of the boat, getting on and off, tying up, that kind of thing, it's vital that you wear one of these. The river's exceptionally cold, places of it are very, very deep, even some of the banks where you're mooring could be as much as 10 foot deep straight off the edge. Without one of these on, you are at serious risk. The phrase for these is useless unless worn, and it's absolutely true. Should somebody fall in the water, the one thing you don't do is reverse the boat backwards towards them, because the propeller acts as a blender on their feet and legs. You have a life belt. Every boat is fitted with them. They are in different positions. It's a very solid thing. Someone is going to get hurt if you try to be accurate with that, so just throw it close to them, let them get to it, please. To recover somebody out of the water, use a rope off the back of the boat. Don't do this at any other point on the boat. Drop it into the water and tie it off with your 0800 knot. Now this loop is now more than strong enough for somebody to step in, get themselves up to deck level, and then get them under the shoulders and heave them up. Now for some places you've got rings, some places you've got posts. Let's work with a ring here. So we pinch the rope and put the pinch through the ring first. We then take the rope back to the boat to its original cleat. There's a simple wrap here. You put it around once to create an O, then around it with an 8, then an O around it and another O around it, and pull it tight. Now you must remember to leave some slack. You need about 18 inches because the river rises and falls. So let's look at that wrap again. It's an O around, an 8 across, an O around and another O around to pull it tight. And you're familiar with that because it's a free phone number. If you're mooring to a post, it's important to wrap the rope twice around the post, create a loop, invert it and flip it over. Then create another loop, invert it and flip it over. So if you watch that again, it's twice around the post, loop, invert, flip, pull, loop, invert, flip, pull. So all around the boat we have some fenders hanging down. These protect you from knocks and bumps. Please leave them out at all times, but be aware, they're not bumpers. They are there just to stop boats banging and damaging in close quarters like we're at the boatyard right now. If you are mooring up and can't reach a post or a ring to put your ropes through, you will have a set of these. They're called rond anchors. They stake into soft ground and you have a ring on the back of them. When you have untied your ropes, coil them, put them neatly somewhere, make sure they can't get in the water. So remember, whilst you're travelling, keep your ropes safely on deck. If there's a chance of them getting blown in, put them into a space where they can't get blown off the deck into the river. If you do end up with something around your prop, whether it's a rope or some river weed or something you've picked up elsewhere, the one thing you never ever do is get in the water to try and sort the problem out yourself. You can't even reach the propeller without going underneath the boat. You'll have to call us, and the only way we can do it these days is to tow the boat somewhere that has a crane lift the boat out of the water, cut the problem off and put the boat back in. Sadly, this doesn't happen with a click of the fingers. It will take a long while. Just make sure your ropes are okay, otherwise you could run into difficulties if they're in the river. You need to be careful walking down the sides of the decks. All of the boats have got handrails on, and the rule is one hand for the boat. Children, don't run. It's cold and wet down there. You don't want to be falling. It's important to realise that boats that have sliding canopies, movable sunroofs, things like that, often will have the handrail attached to the movable part. Therefore, if this canopy was all the way back where the cameraman currently is, there would be no handrail between here and all the way to the front screens. The legal position on that is, if there is a handrail gap of any more than 1.5 meters, you shouldn't be in the area on the deck because you have nowhere to grab. So if this canopy on this boat was all the way back, please don't walk in this section. You can gain access to it from other areas. If you walk past here, you don't have a grab rail. All boats are fitted with mud weights. This is an 18 kilo lump of steel attached to a rope, which is attached to the boat. It's used as an emergency thing to hold you should you have a problem with the engine, and you can moor in a couple of broads and use it as an anchor, and you'll simply swing around it. The rules are really rather simple. First up, obviously it's heavy. Don't drop it on the deck because it will go through. Make sure the rope is tied to the boat before you drop it in, for obvious reasons, and you must drop it in. It's absolutely imperative you drop it. If you hand it down, it won't do its job properly. It has to hit the bottom of the river, sinks into the river, and then the river reforms around it, which is why it's a semi-cone shape. It acts as a barb. To get it back out of the river, sometimes that's really heavy because it's being sucked into the riverbed. If you're struggling with it, don't hurt your back, don't get a rope burn or something. Use the engine, just pull away from it gently and then recover it then. But do not travel with that down, because it'll make things awkward. You can also use the mud weight as part of a mooring procedure. In a wind like we've got today, it would help terribly if we were to try to get back into this stern-on mooring here. If you were to throw the mud weight in as part of your mooring procedure, it will stop the front of the boat being pulled around too much by the wind. So bear that in mind too. We recommend that you fill your water tanks every day, and that's just water that comes through your taps and your showers. If you run out, then you'll have to find some, but more importantly, you're going to have to turn the water pump off, otherwise it will just keep running, flatten your batteries, burn out, blow fuses. All kinds of problems will result from it. If you fill up every day, you'll be fine. We recommend that you don't drink the water directly out of the taps because it's out of a tank and it's filled up from sources that we have no control of. If you wish to drink that water, boil it. If you want cold water, we thoroughly recommend that you have bottled water with you. But of course, you can boil the water and then let it cool if you so wish. Water pipes are available at many places. They are typically blue. Some pubs will have them, some moorings will have them, the yacht stations have them, but by no means will everyone have them. And of course, not everything might be open due to the COVID pandemic, so I'm afraid I can't guarantee the availability of water, but you shouldn't struggle. Water is filled into the deck via a point on the deck. On this boat, Tranquil Freedom, it's down here, and there is a key that typically hangs or is stored somewhere by the helm that will open that filler. This hose is quite warm now. It's been out in the sun for a while. The water within it will be probably showerable, if you like, so don't just turn the hose on having put it into the tank. You want to let this run cold and clear before you put it into the boat. If you want hot water, you'll need to run the engine if it's coming out of the tap cold. The engine needs to run for about 45 minutes to an hour to turn the cold water into hot water. Every boat has got a couple of gas cylinders on it which are stored in a locker, typically towards the back of the boat. There will be some kind of method to change between one bottle and the other. We will always ensure that you have one full bottle on the boat. You must not under any circumstances take any other form of containerised gas on the boat. A barbecue, a fishing light, anything like that is not permitted on the boat. Now, we all know that having a barbie while you're out in the sun is a fantastic thing, but we really would discourage you. Things like this are an absolute menace. They cause fires everywhere. People tend to put them on things that will catch fire, like key headings and such. A number of them get lost every year to people mistreating things like this. And you probably wouldn't believe it, but people will put something like that on the roof or the deck of the boat as well while it is still burning hot, and it will destroy the boat. Please don't do this, because we will ask you to pay for the damage. Your entire boat runs on these things in terms of providing you with cooling for the fridge, heating for your tootsies, light, flushing the toilet in many cases, putting water through to your taps. A whole manner of things rely on a bank of these. And these need to be treated like your bank balance. If you just drain, there's nothing left. You have to have a method of putting something back in. And that method is running the engine. But like your bank balance, these things get into a kind of overdraft facility, which takes a lot more effort to get out of. So if you flatten these, imagine you've gone into your overdraft and you've got one heck of a interest rate to overcome before you get back to even that level break-even balance. You must run the engine for at least 4 hours every single day to keep the battery bank topped up. The first thing that will fail on your boat if the batteries are not in good condition is the fridge. The fridge will not work properly, and the fridge is a really big drain of power. Beyond that, you'll start noticing the lights getting dim. You'll notice that the water pressure isn't what it was before, a whole raft of things like that. You must use power sensibly. At home, it costs you more money if you leave the light on. In the boat, if you leave the light on or the tap running or all of these other things, it costs you in the fact that you don't have those power reserves later to use when you need them. If you're not using things, turn things off. If you're not using the inverter, turn it off. It is a silent drain of the power. Don't turn the fridge up, and a whole host of other things as well. Read the skipper's manual and it will tell you all about these things. When you're running the engine, make sure the key is left in the run position and that there are no warning lights on the dashboard. Warning lights are much the same as the car. They indicate something isn't working properly in most cases. If the key isn't in the run position, most boats will still run. Curious, I know, but that's the way they work. However, if the key isn't in the run position, you're not charging your batteries, because the run position turns on the battery charging circuits, and of course that's really important stuff. The rules of the river are quite simple. You travel on the right hand side. That's the opposite side to what we drive on the roads over here, so it's like driving on the continent if that's something that you've done. Do bear this in mind. Give way to other vessels in much the same way as you would expect to on the road. You need to be moored up before sunset. It is not permissible for you to travel after sunset. Now, of course, sunset moves every day, and what we're not talking about is you looking up and say, well, is that sunset or not? Google the sunset time, and that is the legal time. If you travel after sunset, you're traveling without insurance, without permission, and you're traveling illegally. Do expect to get prosecuted for doing so, because there are plenty of people out there that will report hire boats doing this. So we got a very windy day today, and it will have an effect on the way that the boat handles. Every gust of wind, particularly if it's hitting the boat side on, is going to give you a little bit of grief. Now, if you're just traveling, it's not really a problem, but when you come into more, obviously you're traveling in closer proximity to things at slower speeds with less power available to you to do various things, unfortunately it's going to have a bit more of an effect. You need to bear this in mind. You also need to bear in mind tidal current. On the southern rivers we have some relatively strong currents. Now, not necessarily an awful lot down here towards Norwich, but when you get to places like Langley, Cantley, and all the way from there to Great Yarmouth and beyond up the Bure, and all the way to kind of some Leighton on the River Waveney, you can have some very strong currents that will either impede or help you in your journey. So if you're pushing into the current, obviously you've got Mother Nature pushing back against you. You need to go faster to maintain a similar river speed as you would have been otherwise. If the current is pushing you along, obviously you need less power in order to make headway against that. Well, in fact, it's not even against it, is it? It's with it. So you could really come off the revs and therefore use an awful lot less fuel. These are things that you do bear in mind if you really want to save fuel, and indeed you can save a lot of fuel if you travel with the currents rather than against them. And if you're approaching a swing bridge, and there are 2 of them, bear in mind that there are some vessels that will not pass underneath the bridge, and they will wait for the bridge to open. And what they really should do is sit by on the lay-by moorings that have been put there for them. But typically what they actually do is they circle around, and sometimes they get in people's way. Do watch out for them. You should be able to get under the bridges without the bridges opening, because your boat should be low enough. However, do pay attention to the bridge markers and be absolutely sure. So here we see a bridge height marker. The reading is taken from where the water hits the marker. So here we can see we've got about 33.5 feet under the bridge ahead of us. Most bridges are much lower than this, of course. And by the helm of every boat there is a plaque that tells you how high the boat is, but this is typically with the screens and canopy lowered. Please pay particular attention to the Reedham Ferry, which is a vehicle ferry which is anchored to either bank of the River Yare by chains, and it pulls itself across using those chains. Please do not go near the ferry if it is in motion. Wait until it is docked and then pass in the middle of the available channel. You can see the chains coming off the ferry. If you catch those in the rudder or the propeller of the boat, there's a very good chance you'll sink it. You need to be aware also that the river can run exceptionally fast around here. If you're approaching and the ferry sets off, which you shouldn't do, but it does sometimes happen, then you may have to go into reverse or circle to avoid coming close to it. Watch out on certain broads and open spaces for markers as well. You can see red and green markers in this still photograph of Wroxham Broad. You must stay within the channel which is marked by the green markers on the right hand side and the red markers on the left hand side. If you stray, you'll find that the areas outside of these markers are exceptionally shallow and you'll run the boat aground. If you intend to go across Breydon Water to get to Great Yarmouth and the northern Broads, you need to plan the journey to work with the tides. You must not go at any time other than low slack water. Like the Broad in the previous shot, the whole area is shallow. There is a marked channel through it, marked with the same kind of posts that you saw previously. Running aground on Breydon Water is likely to have you evacuated from the vessel by the Coast Guard. Well, that's the end of our initial video for the handover of the boat. Thank you for watching. We'll see you very soon at Freedom, where we'll show you the boat in a little more detail and show you how to use it. Take care everybody, and enjoy the Broads.